Hello, and welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
This month we read I Was a Teenage Ghost Hunter by Brian K. Henry. This month was kind of neat because the author actually sent us a copy of the book. He reached out to us on Twitter and asked if we would consider reading his book, and we took him up on it, and he sent us a copy, and here we are. Our podcast episodes, as always, are split into two sections. The first one is a spoiler-free description and our overall score, and then a more in-depth discussion of the book and the ending, which will obviously be spoiler-heavy, and our individual scores for the book. But first, let's talk about the author. Brian K. Henry is the author of the fantasy novel House of Prension and sci-fi novel Space Command and the Planet of the Bejeweled Concubine, as well as the story collection Space Command and the Planets of Doom. Primarily a writer of comedy and satire, Brian has also completed 7 comedy screenplays, several collaborations with punk cabaret duo The Tyrants in Therapy, and numerous short stories, sketches, and, of course, tweets. A California native and longtime Pasadena resident, Henry holds a PhD in English from UC Riverside and an MA from CSU Fullerton. A diehard CD addict and music fan, his collection spans from classical to Britpop to punk, with especially large sections devoted to his favorite bands. Lauren, let's hear about the book description.
On the back of the book, it says as follows. Moody 16-year-old barista Devin Mulray is doing his best to ignore bizarre manifestations at his job in the chilly Northern California town of Arcata. Already teased about his recurrent phase-outs, the last thing he needs is to get pegged as a guy who sees ghosts. It doesn't help his state of mind that his boss is a sarcastic slacker, his single dad is always on the road with clients, and local occult fangirl Naira is spreading ghost boy rumors about him online. But when violent paranormal activity badly spooks teens in an abandoned estate, Devin's pushed into investigating by his eccentric friends Clive, a budding composer, and Rex, a tech head excited by ghost-hunting gadgetry. At first reluctant to get involved, Devin's encouraged when Emily, one of the more empathetic girls at Grey Bluff High, is impressed with his daring. Together the friends explore the creepy Rouston Manor, but as the only person able to perceive the manifestations, Devin soon finds himself going one-on-one against a powerful spirit who attacks the locals and infiltrates Devin's own dreams. Devin must face his fear of confronting the spirit world and get to the bottom of the hauntings before the specter unleashes more havoc on him and his friends.
All right, and then let's hear from Barbara about a little bit more background info on the book.
Yeah, the book was published on March 11th, 2014, as a 3.87 out of 5 on. It's 265 pages, and it's classified under paranormal, fantasy, and comedy. And the author, like Michael mentioned, did self-publish this book. He got a free copy to review it.
So let's dive into the first half of our episode. What did you guys think about I Was a Teenage Ghost Hunter? And remember, as always, no spoilers.
So I really enjoy the friendship between the main character, Devin, and then his 2 best friends, Rex and Clive. I thought their antics were fun to read about. I thought their friendship was believable, and it was really well written. The dialogue between them was well written as well. And the author made them feel like real people, not just your typical like cool teenagers. Since they had like their awkward moments that every teenager goes through, and I feel like he wrote that really well. What I wasn't a huge fan of was the female characters. I feel like the female characters weren't really portrayed well. Out of the 3 main female characters, one of them is pretty much like the main character, Devin, describes her as like a slob, which is his boss at like his barista job. The other one is Emily, and well, I guess not for spoilers or anything like that, I just kind of feel like she was just kind of thrown in there. The other one's Naira, or however you pronounce her name. I'm not really sure.
I pronounced it Naira. I think Lauren said Naira, though, right?
Yeah, I did, but I don't know if that's right.
Yeah.
Either way.
And so I wasn't a huge fan of that being a female. I always like seeing cool female characters, so I feel like this book was a little lacking in that. I did enjoy how the ghosts kind of were described and stuff like that. I feel like the author did a really good job of describing things overall, and he did a really good job of like painting a picture and setting the location. Like the mansions are really cool how he described it. Like I pictured it immediately in my head. The story is billed as a young adult book, but and for the most part, that is true as far as content is concerned. But I did think some of the vocabulary used might be off-putting for the younger audiences, since it might be a little too advanced for them.
Definitely agree on the vocabulary stuff. I also had to look up a bunch of words, and it's not a common thing for me anyway in books. And I feel like since this target audience for this book was even younger than your average young adult book, like middle school, I think is the age group he was going for. That would be, I guess that would incentivize the kids to look up and learn the words, but it could also cause kids to get to a word they don't know. And if they have that enough times, I feel like maybe they're reading the book too.
Right.
As a former teacher, so I taught fourth grade for 4 years before my current job, and this would have been one that I feel like would be popular in my fourth grade reading library. And fourth graders are only 9 and 10 years old, but I feel like for some of my more advanced readers, they would have been able to kind of grasp this book. And I always encourage them to look up words they don't know, and so they get, like extra points if they, learn a new vocab word. So it has that going for it, I think. I also enjoyed the banter between the characters. It was a believable kind of teenage relationships. I didn't like how there wasn't much depth to any of the characters. We didn't really get any backgrounds or information on their families other than just like small details here and there. And like Barbara mentioned, the female characters were kind of lacking. Like one was a sarcastic, kind of a jerk boss, and then the other one was like portrayed as a crazy person that, like, I don't know. And then Emily, like Barbara kind of said, was just kind of like an afterthought almost. So I would have preferred some stronger female characters, but I did like I think for the intended audience, the lack of complexity to an extent would be appealing because it'd be easier for them to follow and comprehend, which is a plus.
Yeah, that's something I didn't even think about, was that the simpler story with less twists and turns like what we're used to reading in other YA books and adult novels. Maybe that is a pro here for kids reading it, is that it was, since there wasn't a whole lot going on with the story, it was very easy to follow. So maybe if you're a kid and you're into spooky stuff, this would be right up your alley. The one thing that I think, like both of them said, I'm going to echo this for a third time, that was my favorite part of this book was how he wrote specifically the dialogue between the boys, the friends. I thought that was very realistic. And my favorite parts of this book, truthfully, were reading the dialogue, and not even exclusively just between the friends. I think that this author writes dialogue very well. It was very compelling to read. Some of the stuff in between the dialogue was a little less compelling to read every once in a while, a little dragging at times, or that kind of stuff. But the dialogue was very, very compelling to read, and I really enjoyed reading that part of it.
Another thing I want to mention is the overuse of the last names. When you first get introduced to the characters, that I completely understand that. And maybe like once or twice or three times more after that, that's fine. But it seemed like every single chapter, except for like the middle part of the book, and then it continued back up again at the end of the book, it would be like Devin's last name, and then his best friend's last name, and then Emily's last name. And like, we get it. We know their last names. We know who these characters are. Even if I don't remember their last name, like I know who you're referencing because there's not that many characters. So it's easy to keep everyone figured out who they are. And so I thought that it was really distracting to me. I don't know, maybe I'm just nitpicking at this point, but it kind of threw me because every time I would read that, I was just like, ugh, kind of frustrated and took me out of the story when I would reread that again. I don't know if you guys noticed.
And that's not an exaggeration. I would be laying next to her while she was reading this, and she would verbally say, more last names. So that's the true thing. I didn't recognize that until she pointed it out, and then I started noticing it. I don't know if it was annoying necessarily to me, but I agree with Barbara that it's definitely overkill.
Well, I noticed in the book they went back and forth between, like, sometimes they would use the last name in lieu of the first name, which is pretty common, like, among boys and guys. Yeah. Like, calling them, like, I think, like, there was, like, calling him Mulray or calling, so I noticed that, but it didn't really bother me.
The other thing I thought was kind of funny when I was reading through our notes as we were preparing this is Lauren mentioned earlier that there's no backstory about even the main characters or the side characters or their families. Like, you don't hear about really any of that at all. And I didn't notice that when I was reading it, but when I read her notes on that, I was like, I thought about it, and I was like, you're right. There's literally no background or very little background on these characters.
We get more about Clive than we do anyone else. Like, we know Clive is British. He lived there for a while with his parents, and then they came to the U.S. But, like, I feel that's the only person that we really did get more information on, just so you understand why he's speaking the way he was actually speaking, because he used, like, slang that I'm assuming British people use. I have no idea. I'm not British, but there were certain things that he used, and I'm like, I have no idea what the heck he's talking about. Yeah. But for the other characters, we get a little bit about Naira, that she likes, like, is into Wiccan stuff and is all about the occult and that, and how she dresses, and that's about it. As far as, like, even a little bit for Devin, we really don't know much except that he lives with his dad. We have no idea why his mom's not there. Do we know if she died? Do we know, like, we have no idea.
Never home.
Yeah. Dad's a lawyer. That's about it. A divorce lawyer. That's all we know. We don't know anything about why his mom's not around. And we don't get much about Rex at all.
The other thing that I thought about, though, with all this and, like, not getting the background info that we're used to, is that I think we're looking at this book through our lens, where, like, we're used to reading books that are at least twice this long. And if the book is twice that long, then it has a lot more time to develop those characters and give you more background information. And so I had to kind of remember that, like, this book isn't the same kind of book as those that are twice or three times as long as this one, because, you know, those books that are 2 and 3 times longer than this aren't targeted at younger children or middle school age.
Maybe kids don't really care about back.
I struggled with, when I was reading this and, like, making notes, and my ultimate rating, which I know we'll get to later, is based on reading it as an adult. So I based it on that, and not necessarily based on reading it as an intended audience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. That's exactly the way I rated it, too. I rated it for myself personally, not the way, you know, I would rate it if I was going to be recommending it to, like, a middle schooler or something.
Right. Like, this would be a great book for, you know, my former students and stuff, and just older kids, too, in the sense that it is more simple. It's like I talked about earlier, just easier to follow, easier to comprehend. I think if it was too complex with too many backstories and different things, kids lose interest faster than adults do. Like, we want all of that, and I think for the age group that maybe this is intended for, it's more streamlined, just because that's the attention span, maybe. I don't know.
So obviously at this point, we're not going to go into our individual ratings, like Lauren said. You have to wait for that if you're ready to listen to the whole podcast. But our group score for this one, between the three of us, the average was a 5 out of 10. And so after the score, the next part is talking about, would we recommend this book? And if you would recommend it, who would you recommend it to? And we're going to start with Lauren on this.
Like I said earlier, this would have been one that I would definitely put in the advanced section of my classroom library. It's well written for that audience, that intended audience, and I think that the plot points that he does write are easy for that group to digest and comprehend. So from a teaching standpoint, I feel like it'd be a great recommendation, and could even be used, like, the descriptive language was really cool. I was able to, like, visualize the Rouston Manor and, like, just visualize a lot of what was happening, and so I think that that's a good way for kids to also get really into books, as if they're able to kind of use their imaginations. So I just said I would recommend it to kids, like tweens and teens, but not any of my adult friends, just because it's not really written for that audience, and it's not as enjoyable as an adult.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I would say. I would recommend it to younger kids that are looking for advanced reading. I'd recommend it to middle school age kids, especially. I feel like, to me, that seemed, reading it, like that was really like the target. It's like maybe 6th, 7th, 8th graders, just a little bit younger than the boys in the book, or even maybe high school be okay to read this too. So I would recommend it in those situations. I think it would be, the vocabulary stuff would be great reading for kids who are interested in learning more and getting more, expanding the vocabulary, because some of those words were super complex and I had to go and look them up myself as a 30-year-old adult. So I assume, kids would have to as well. If they didn't, then I'd feel pretty dumb. Some of those are pretty difficult words, but so yeah, I'd recommend it to children, middle schoolers, high schoolers, maybe. Any of my adult friends, though, like Lauren said, probably not. But that's okay, because the book's not really intended for that audience. I don't think that's how the author wrote it. So the people I would recommend it to are younger people.
I would recommend this book to pretty much like what everyone else said. Maybe a younger tween group, middle schooler, that kind of thing. Especially ones who like ghost stories and that sort of thing, because I think it's written well, and I don't think they get bored of it. And I think it's very descriptive in that sense, and I think it's appropriate in the scariness aspect of it to where it would hold their attention, but it wouldn't be overly scary. Like there's no like Stephen King-esque scariness going on. So it's age appropriate in that sense, where there's no mention of like blood or anything like that, to maybe if some parents were hesitant and kids reading what might be considered a scarier story. I would hesitate only about like what we mentioned would be the SAT type words. I feel like, I guess I didn't even consider it like how Lauren said that it would be a good teaching moment for kids to look up and stuff like that. I know the Kindle version, you can click on the word. It gives you a brief definition of the word and stuff like that. So I would definitely maybe recommend reading it in the Kindle format, just so you can quickly look up words. So maybe if your kid doesn't like busting out, his phone to look up a word or something like that, it's just easier to look it up on your Kindle. That would be good. Although the Kindle version, you don't get to see the really cool cover of the book, unless you have like the Kindle Fire, which comes with the color and stuff like that. Because I think the covers are really cool. The artist who did the cover did a really good job. I thought that was really neat. So you kind of missed the edition. But I also feel like this book, I wasn't the target audience for it, obviously. I would recommend anyone, an adult my age who has kids around this age. I know a lot of adults, sometimes they like to read the books that their kid is going to read just in case they feel like it's not appropriate for their kids. And I think they would enjoy reading this just fine. Maybe they can even read it with their kids.
For those of you leaving us, don't forget to give us a rating if you like us, and follow us on Instagram at Badass Lit Pod, and check out our new Facebook page where we are also at Badass Lit Pod.
We want to hear from you guys. If you've got a book you want us to read, please let us know. As we said last episode, we do have some actual listener recommendations coming up, which will be exciting. Not this next episode, but the episode after that will be our second listener recommended book. Now for a short preview of our next episode.
Next month, we are reading Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, which was my pick. And head on over to our Instagram handle, where we'll be posting information about the book, if you like. And a little bit about the book here is: a world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakens. The house of Berethnet has ruled Ines for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabran the Ninth must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Ede Duran is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Ede keeps a watchful eye on Sabran, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the Dark Sea, Tanae has trained all her life to be a dragon rider, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. I already know I'm having trouble reading these people's names, but that's like any fantasy novel. Yay!
All right, so that's what you guys have to look forward to next month, The Priory of the Orange Tree. Now, for those of you sticking around for the spoilers, remember the next part of our podcast is an in-depth look at the book. So if you want to read it, please stop listening now and come back when you're done. If you don't care, keep listening. Or if you're listening to this to see, hey, maybe my kid will like this book, then keep listening too. So, last chance to leave. If you're still here, here we go. And now, for those of you who are still here, sticking around for the spoilers, here we go. We'll start with Barbara's first question that she wrote.
Well, I feel like we kind of touched base on this, but did you guys find it creepy at all?
Lauren, you're up first. Did you find the book creepy?
I did not find it creepy, to be honest. Not really at all. But that's also because I'm used to reading, like, pretty sadistic, like, when I read, like, mystery novels or, like, what I would consider, like, scary adult novels, they're a lot more creepy and a lot more psychological thriller kind of type thing. However, if it were in my, classroom library and kids were reading it, I think they would have found it very suspenseful and creepy with just the right amount of, like, haunted, but without being what I would consider too scary. Like, I don't think that this is going to keep kids up at night, unless they're just real sensitive. It wasn't, some of the descriptions were, like, somewhat scary for certain audiences, but I feel like it was the right amount of balance between, like, being suspenseful for kids and too scary. For adults, I would not say it was creepy at all.
So I'm going to answer this question a little bit differently. I did not find it to be scary. It wasn't scary at all. I was never scared reading the book. The way that the author wrote the Ralston Manor, though, and the way he described the things that were, not only the things that were there, but the things that were going on there and the spirit itself as well, I thought that was done in a very creepy way. I thought he did a really good job writing that to make it creepy. It wasn't scary. I was never thinking like, oh no, like you do in like a Stephen King book or some of the books that Lauren was talking about that she reads. But the atmosphere that he created, I thought was genuinely creepy. And I think, like Lauren was saying, for younger kids, it would definitely be scary.
Yeah, Michael literally took the words right out of my mouth. I think for the targeted age group, I think it's very well written. I don't think it's going to, like Lauren mentioned, I don't think it's going to scare anyone unless the kid is kind of overly sensitive to that kind of stuff. I feel like for the target age group, they're going to really enjoy it. I think that it's creepy enough for them. I don't know about scary, but I think the author did a really good job of describing the scenes and kind of putting you into that head. What is it? The head frame? What was that?
Mindset?
It's upsetting. Mindset. God, I'm so bad at this. The right mindset. And so
Frame of mind could have been another one. I think that's what you were.
The what?
Frame of mind.
Frame of mind, yes. Yeah. For the kids, I personally didn't think it was scary or creepy or any of the sort, but I also read Stephen King, and he's like, the king of horror books. So, like, there you go. I didn't find that whatsoever, but I think the author did a very good job of setting the mood for it, especially how descriptive he was. Like, the Ralston Manor was just amazing. Anytime the kids stepped foot in the building, like, you could feel it, like you can see it in your mind's eye. And one thing in particular that I enjoyed was how he described color in the book. There was a scene in the book where Devin, the main character, is chasing one of the books, and he describes it as a lemon book and not like a bright yellow or anything like that. And as soon as he said lemon, like, my mind just went super bright color fruit, because that's what a lemon is. And it really painted a cool image in my head. And that's like one image that I don't think I'm going to forget, because I just pictured him like this lemon colored book zooming around and Devin chasing it in pitch blackness. And that's like a beacon for him to chase. And I thought that was a really cool way of describing it.
And what I did find genuinely terrifying is, as I was reading Barbara's notes when she was just talking, I realized that we had very similar thoughts, almost to the point where we were both talking about that we found the setting creepy, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, so the setting was really creepy. And I think that the ghost parts were well written in the descriptive sense. Barbara, do you want to ask your next question?
Did you, once again, it's like all stuff that we've kind of mentioned a bit earlier, but did you guys enjoy the banter between the friends and other characters?
Lauren, you want to jump in first?
Sure. I thought that the banter was probably the most pleasing aspect of the book. It was fun. The author did a good job of establishing, like, you could tell that they were good friends just through their dialogue. Like, I think it was Michael that mentioned earlier that he does a good job of writing dialogue. So that was good. There was a lot of humor in there, a lot of kind of like picking on each other in good fun. I like we talked about earlier, I disliked the lack of female characters and just how the female characters were portrayed as being, whatever. But I really enjoyed the banter between the main three.
I also really liked the banter between the main three. It was very well written. The dialogue was fun to read, whether it was a tense moment they were having at the house, where they were trying to figure out what to do next or problem solving, or if it was like just, teenage guys poking fun at each other and having a good time. It was enjoyable to read. And I think for me, some of that was that, it reminded me of being a teenage boy and being, making stupid jokes back and forth with my friends. I wasn't a teenage ghost hunter, but I was a teenage boy. So that was cool. The banter, like Lauren was saying, I think that was also the highlight of the book for me. I really liked the way that he wrote the dialogue. And if you were just to ask me, like if we pretend there was another question on here that said, what's one thing that would bring you back to another one of this author's books, and that would be it. If it was, if his dialogue was very well written, I'd read another one of his books just for that alone.
I feel the same pretty much. I feel like the dialogue and the banter between the friends was the strongest part of the book. The way they talked and joked with each other was great. The boys felt like real people since their dialogue felt natural and unforced. It also brought a lot of comedic relief to the book at parts where I feel like it needed it to maybe disperse the creepiness of it for kids and stuff like that. Like there was one scene where Devin is up on the Ralston Manor roof and he's asking his friend Clive down there, like if he sees anything, and Clive is like, yeah, there's like a creepy person, it's like with bat wings or something like that. And Devin's like, dude, that's me. It's my jacket, like billowing from the wind. And he's like, oh, just kidding. Like, I thought that was hilarious. What I think that the book did dirty was the female characters. Like I've already mentioned that before. I was a bit confused with Devin's relationship with Naira. It seemed like they were supposed to be friends, but it didn't really show well most of the times because at least to me, it seemed like he was not happy with her. He seemed like he always wanted to get rid of her every time she showed up, and he kind of described her being like snooty and a know-it-all, and not nice terms to describe her. So I was confused on whether they were supposed to be friends or she just kind of thought she was friends with him and just kind of inserted herself in his friend group. As far as Emily is concerned, I just feel like she was an afterthought for a love interest. Like she's mentioned in the beginning, kind of disappears in the middle of the book, and only appears again conveniently, like to move the plot along as far as like convincing Devin to go to the manor whenever she calls, and like she hears Rex saying in the background that they're going to, go to the Ralston Manor, and then she gets brought back up towards the end, and then she like kisses Devin, and I was like, where was the love interest here? Like I didn't see that she liked him whatsoever. At least I didn't really pick up on that. Obviously Devin had a crush on her, that was pretty apparent, but I don't know, I just felt like it was just kind of placed there just to have like the main character get the most popular girl in school after everything happened type trope. And then obviously like the other main female character was his boss, who was a total tool bag, and she was kind of a dick to him. So not another great female character. So I would have liked to see more strong female characters, or better. If you're going to use Emily, maybe in the second book, maybe have her, I don't know, describe her better, give her more interesting plot points for why she's in the book to begin with. I don't know. Give her something to do instead of just being the love interest for the main character. I thought Clive was also a prick sometimes to Devin, but maybe that's, I know like you don't always enjoy your friends all the time. I loved Rex. He was great. The lovable goofball for me. Also, Linus, like he just was mentioned, and then we don't really know what, like it was a red herring, but then not really, because he was there for like maybe 2 chapters really of interaction, and just that was about it.
That was a very weird subplot with Linus and the whole like. What's funny though, and I was talking to Barbara about this the other day with Linus, is I was really interested in the Linus subplot when that got introduced. Like I was like, oh, this could be like a really cool twist, and then it turned out to just be nothing, which was disappointing to me. To me.
I mean, so when he's first mentioned it, Devin notices him when they're clothes shopping for the party. Like Clive was looking for a hat or whatever, and it's mentioned that like Devin recognizes, like it says like he seems familiar, but he doesn't know where or why he's there type thing. And I don't know what the point of that was. Like, it felt like we should know who he was, or maybe that's just how the author wanted us to think, like the red herring, like, oh, yes, like he's the bastard child of Ralston. But then that really wasn't the case whatsoever, and we find that out in like 2 seconds. So I felt like that was just kind of an odd scene to mention him, if that's the case.
I just thought it was like you were saying, like it was such a weird thing. Like it was like this, oh, here he is, and here's this potential twist, and then it's like, oh, just kidding, it's actually nothing. And I think maybe it would have been less disappointing if it had been a longer build-up. Like if it had been like, ooh, like is this the mystery? And then it turns out at the end it's like, nope, not it. But for it to be like Barbara said, like a 2-chapter spin.
It wasn't even like he was brought up or I don't know, like that subplot of him being the bastard child of Ralston was in 1 chapter, and then the very next chapter you find out that that's false. So I don't know, it seemed a little anticlimactic.
It needed to either be like drug out a little bit longer so that you like were seeing it more as a red herring. Like I feel like if it would have been, extended a little bit, it would have been more intriguing. But since it was so abrupt, it was just kind of like, I don't know. Just I wonder why the character was introduced, I guess.
Part I'll I guess differentiate with Barbara's opinion on is the female characters. I thought Emily could have just been removed and wasn't really a necessary part of the story. She wasn't very well developed, and she was just kind of there, which I know she said that as well. But I thought Naira was a pretty cool character.
I didn't say she wasn't. I just said her friendship with Devin was kind of weird. Like, were they friends or not? Because it didn't seem like they were.
I think they were friends, and then when she blasted his stuff out on that ghost social network and he became ghost boy at school, that pissed him off, and I think he distanced himself from her socially to kind of as teenagers do to prevent negative social implications.
I think friends don't blast their friends on social media networks and show up all of their secrets.
Yeah, I'd say that's what I'm saying. She didn't seem very likable. Like, she seemed fine for a character. Like, she had a lot of literally a lot of character. She was all, in your face and stuff like that. But as far as a likable character, I didn't think she was very likable, because if she was supposed to be his friend, like Lauren mentioned, like, you're not supposed to pretty much blast your friend online, and that teenagers can be assholes. And, she's like, oh, no one even reads it. Well, obviously everyone in school read it. And that was even a point in the book where, like, Devin was getting bullied, essentially, and being called Ghost Boy in high school because of what she did. So, I don't know. She wasn't likable at all. At least not to me. She was fine as a character, but
kind of like
I liked the other boys more. Yeah.
Quirky, but like, and so I liked that she had her own style, and like, she didn't really seem to care what people thought. But as far as being a likable female character, I wouldn't classify her as that, just because it was kind of a bitchy thing to do, to throw him under the bus like that. And then she didn't even really help him. I mean, she just was always criticizing him, it seemed.
Yeah, exactly. She didn't really help him. She just kind of spewed out things that she seemed like a know-it-all, but not in like a nice way.
No, she was kind of mean in that regard. I did, though, like Devin's boss, because I thought it was I didn't like her. Like, oh wow, what a nice person. But I liked seeing a female in that character, because I feel like that was kind of a gender flip. In most books, usually when it's a crappy teenage job, the boss of that job is usually some douchey guy. It's not usually a female boss in that role, and so that was kind of interesting to see. I mean, it wasn't much different. Like, I mean, she acted the way a lot of these teenage bosses are generally stereotyped into in books.
Like they don't do any work.
And they're lazy, and And so she fit that role perfectly. It was just funny to see as a girl in that role as opposed to a guy. Yeah, Luna thought that was a really interesting part as well.
Did anyone think it was hilarious that the author even put in like the thing with the lady that's allergic to caffeine?
Oh my god, that was awesome. When that happened, and this is like one of the comedic things that I thought the author did a very good job was when Devin's thinking like, bitch, why are you here? Like, why are you at a coffee shop if you're allergic to caffeine? Like, that makes no sense.
Especially if it's like an allergy that's like super severe, because like you're literally the most likely to have something happen at a coffee shop, like get something mixed up. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious, and I totally agree. I totally agree with Devin's thought process. Like, why are you here at a coffee shop if you're allergic that bad? If you're that bad allergic to caffeine, like, go somewhere else.
See, I thought that was funny, and I think that was like a little bit of satire on the author's part, since reading his bio after we read this book, and that he, like a lot of his other books, are kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
Comedy, sci-fi comedy for the other one.
Oh, no, I thought
it was good. It was
comedy
funny.
In this book was golden. Like, I was cracking up most of the time with, like, the banter and that kind, like, that scene specifically, too, like, was cracking me up, because I was just like, oh, wow, like, that would happen to poor Devin, and I'm totally in his corner, and everyone else was like, how dare you even ask that? Like, you know, like, why would you even say that to him? And I feel like that's how we are as a society now. It's like, ooh, you know, can't offend anybody.
Moving on to the next question, and if you're still here and you don't want spoilers, then this is really like the game over time. Unlike last month, where we started right away with the ending question. It's at least question number 3 this month. So that question is, did you like the ending? And I'm going to answer the question first, because I think it's my turn to answer first this time. No, I mean, the ending was just kind of meh. It was fine. It just kind of ended. I feel like there was the buildup that was there and the mystery that was there surrounding Ralston and the manor and why all of this is happening, and you know, why is he showing himself to Devin, and is there some intricate reason of this, like, this haunting? And we got like a taste of what that could have been with Linus's character. But then it just became, it's like, oh no, it's not that was wrong. He's just mad because they broke into his house. I'm like, what? I don't know. I thought that was kind of a meh ending. I was hoping for more. The Linus thing again, like the trying to block, like he was coming back to life to block the bastard heir to his dynasty. It's like, oh, that's kind of that'd be a neat twist, but that ended up not being true. The ending just should have been better. I wish that would have been the ending. I looked over my notes. That's what I wrote. Is I wished that it had been Linus had been the bastard heir to his dynasty, and like that was why all of this was happening, because that would have been more exciting to me than what actually happened.
It would have made more sense for sure. Like it would have. I mean, I felt like I didn't and I have like 2 parts of my brain right now. Like my trying to think about it from a kid's perspective, and then trying to rate it from my perspective as an adult. And from like a kid's perspective, it's like, okay, but I still even feel like that there was no actual plot to close out. Like, okay, there was a lot that was alluded to, like, oh, why is he so pissed off? Like, why is this guy appearing to Devin, and like, what is he so mad about? And, you know, he can't be that. This whole thing, there's no way this whole book is going to end with he's just mad because some kids broke into his house. Like, there's got to be more to it. And then you read the ending, and it's just like, oh, that's it.
Ralston was the stereotypical old man telling the kids to get off his lawn.
That is the whole premise, right? Like that's why he was angry. That's what you guys got from that, right? It was just because the kids were breaking.
That's all I got.
Essentially. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got too.
I was making sure I did. I was like, did I misunderstand something? I agree with what both of you guys have said. The whole saying like, oh, we can't have a complex plot for kids. Like, yeah, but we have to give credit to kids. Like, they understand more than I feel like some people give them credit for. I feel like you could throw in a decently complex story plot, and I feel like they would pick it up. I mean, there's young Harry Potter. Technically, the first book is considered for 11-year-olds. Around the same age group here, and that's very complex. And granted, you age with the books, and I'm assuming this one's probably going to go the same as well because this is book one in a series. The Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief series, I think it's called the Olympian series. That one is also geared towards the younger audience, and it kind of also ages up as well. And I think that is a very intricate plot. So I feel like judging that based on the age group, I don't think that's fair. I feel like he could have thrown in a more intricate plot instead of just having it be because kids broke into his house. Like, I wanted more of a sinister plot, like, ooh, ghosts, normally you think like, ooh, sinister, like what's going on? Like, why is he doing that? And it just kind of was like lackluster, and the climax was really didn't do much for me either. I feel like there was this massive buildup of what was going on, and why is he doing all these manifestations, and why is he choking people with a scarf? And then it was just like, oh, he's just angry because they trespassed. Like, what?
Yeah.
It just kind of was like, oh.
You have a good point about like the not giving kids enough credit, and I think that I say that it might be an okay ending for a kid more just because I'm trying to make it so that, like, I think that a kid would be more satisfied with that ending than an adult would be. But
right.
Also, like, the cool thing, and obviously we could talk for hours about J.K. Rowling, but the cool thing about how she wrote those books was that there were so many complexities, but, like, reading it as a 9, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, like, you don't necessarily register any of the complexities until you, like, go back and reread. I mean, you might register some of them, but the cool thing about that style of writing is, like, she puts them in, but they just kind of go over kids' heads until they're old enough to do it. Whereas this one, like, they're just not even there. It's like,
yeah, I agree. I feel like it just kind of it was a great build up with just not a satisfactory ending.
Moving on to the next question is, did you guys enjoy the depiction of the ghosts or the way the author wrote the ghosts?
I really enjoyed how different the take on the ghosts were in this book. I've never read a book that had the ghosts manifest as colored blobs before. Like, normally it's you ghost, you see it right there, or it's like you don't see it and then they're right there and they're like a little white apparition type looking thing. Whereas this one, it started out as like a color, like a yellow color or red color, and a little blobby of a thing, and then you'll hear kind of a broken voices and stuff like that, and then like the apparition starts manifesting into like creepy looking eyes, and then it went to like a nose and part of a mouth and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool because I've never seen that before. I also enjoyed the way the author picked like different colors to associate for different things. Like when Ralston was pissed, like angry, he was red because he was hostile, and I feel like that made the ghost a little bit more believable for me, as well as the fact that the ghosts when they did appear, they had like a difficult time speaking. It wasn't like all of a sudden they could just speak full sentences to them. Like, it started off with like him trying to repeat one word and having trouble with that one word till like finally he could say that one word, and then he would string along maybe 2 or 3 more words. And that made it, I feel like, more scarier and also, like I said, believable, because it wasn't just like all of a sudden, these things that have been dead for years can just all of a sudden talk perfect English. So I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really cool.
As far as the depiction of the ghosts, I did like how only Devin was able to see them, but everyone else could see like the effects of them. I thought that was interesting. Otherwise, it was somewhat anticlimactic in the sense that they were creepy, but not really that scary, which is, again, probably due to the target audience. But I thought it was interesting that, the depictions of them when they're presenting themselves to Devin, and then just his friends in the background imagining how they're visualizing it with books flying off of shelves, and like they're not seeing any kind of actual thing, but he is. So that was.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The fact that only he was able to see it, but the friends could see everything happening was cool. I thought the ghosts were well written. I liked what Barbara was talking about too. The different colors for different attitudes of the spirits I thought were neat. The ghosts were well written. I enjoyed reading about them. The descriptions, the imagery, the way, like I said earlier, the way he wrote that whole house was pretty cool. Winding this episode down, the next section we get to is our individual scoring. And we're going to start on that now. So, Barbara, what was your score for this one?
I gave it a 6. I thought for a self-published book, I think it was amazing. I've read much crappier, and this one I feel it was well written. As far as the dialogue, how he described everything, it's very well written. So not to be self-published, I think that's an amazing accomplishment, and he did a great job, because I've read not self-published books and there was complete trash. So I think he did a really good job with that. I wanted more from the plot, and that's why I think I lowered it down a little bit, because I was considering a 6.5, but like even thinking like, yes, this is aimed for a younger audience than me, I still feel like he could have still added more of a plot and something a little more engaging and having a better ending, and kids still would have enjoyed that and still would have been able to comprehend some stuff. And even if they, maybe didn't, like if they enjoyed the book so much, maybe as an adult they can go back and reread it and pick up on those stuff Lauren had mentioned. So that's why I took a few points off for that. I do have to remember that it is a series. This is only the first book in the series, so maybe those things that I wanted more of, like maybe more characterization and more of like the characters get more of a story arc, as like more well-rounded and stuff like that, because I do feel like they were a little bit one-dimensional, and since they didn't really learn much of a lesson here, I feel like maybe that could be happening in future books. So I didn't want to grade it too harshly on that. And maybe some of my other questions that I had, maybe about like one of like the white lady that was mentioned, that was the other ghost that Devin saw, maybe she might be a bigger plot point in a future book. And maybe Emily's a well-rounded character in a future book. So I try not to give too many points off for that. And so that was why I gave it a 6. I thought it was enjoyable, but had a few things lacking.
Lauren, what about you?
My rating seems a little bit harsh, but I was rating it from my perspective as an adult reader, and with my current likes and dislikes and different things. So I did give it a 4 for some of the same reasons that Barbara gave it a 6, which is funny. Just like the plot that was lacking, the character development wasn't there. There wasn't a whole lot of depth to the characters and those sorts of things. The ending was just kind of, like Michael said, meh. So reading it from an adult standpoint, coming from somebody who really likes like creepy thriller like novels, this obviously was just not something that I felt like I could give a super high rating to. If I were rating it from like my teacher brain for kids, I would have given it a much higher rating. So like probably like a 7. But because I was rating it from my perspective, as far as like, would I pick this up off of a shelf and read it for pleasure? And that the answer is probably not. But yeah, that's why I gave it what I did.
And I also gave the book a lower rating because I was taking it from the same perspective for me personally, reading it as an adult. So mine was a 5 out of 10 because there are a lot of aspects of the book that I liked, but not enough to where I pick it up and read it again. And the caveat I want to put out there, though, is, I mean, I'm not a teacher, but I'd give 2 scores. So my score is a 5 for me personally. If some of my friends that are my age come and said, "Hey, what do you think about this book?" I'd say, probably not for you. But if I'm giving a kid rating, like, hey, like, should my middle schooler read this book, or should my younger kid read this book? Then like Lauren said, I'd probably give that a 7. I think for a kid's book, it would be a higher rating. From my perspective, though, as an adult book, I'd give it a 5 out of 10.
Well, you guys all get to give your childlike ratings. I'd give it a 7.5. I think kids would absolutely enjoy this book because it's very well written. I think some younger kids' books aren't well written at all. So I think this was very well written in that sense for the targeted audience.
And so that leaves our group score for this one for the adult rating. For those of you still listening, the 5 out of 10 for our group score on this book. So I think that wraps up this episode of I Was a Teenage Ghost Hunter by Brian K. Henry. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We are Badass Literature Society. If you liked us, hopefully you liked it. If you did like it, let us know. Leave us a review. That we'd really appreciate that. If you didn't like it, let us know too. We want to know what we can fix. If you've got book recommendations, let us know. Get on our Instagram page, comment on our stuff. Say, hey, you guys should read this book. More than likely, we'll read it. Follow us on our socials. Our handle is @BadassLitPod. Right now we're on Instagram. I'm trying to get a Facebook page for us set up as well if you want to check that out. Did you guys have anything else to add?
I mean, we can mention, so we're doing Priory of Orange Tree next, and then after that is
Yes, so yeah, we can actually give a double preview this month. So like Barbara was saying earlier, next month we are reading The Priory of the Orange Tree, which was her pick. And then the month after that, we're reading our next, our first social media recommendation. No, this is our second social media recommendation, which is In the Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which was recommended to us by 2 of our listeners.
Yep.
That's what's coming up 2 months from now. But yeah, again, hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next month.
Bye.
Bye-bye.